Okay, so today's classic interview, I'm going to mention his name, but it's not about Jordan Peterson, okay? This is a classic interview we filmed back in June of 2014 with Amy Johnson, who's a psychologist and life coach. And I present this interview to you today not to make this a story about Jordan Peterson. I know a lot of people in the audience don't like it when I talk about Jordan Peterson, and we probably have already spoken about him enough this week. But just because a lot of our perspectives on so-called self-help and advice for life have been sort of subjugated and hijacked by the quote teachings of people like Jordan Peterson, I thought it would be a good week to go back to when I spoke to Amy Johnson, again, psychologist and life coach. This is a sort of different approach to the world of understanding the world around us and figuring out how to exist within it and life advice and all that type of stuff. So even though this isn't about Jordan Peterson, maybe just think about how Amy's approach compares and contrasts to much of what we see young men adhering to and falling for in 2018. I'm joined today by Dr. Amy Johnson, who's a psychologist, life coach, and author. Her website is dramyjohnson.com. It's really great to have you. I came across a couple of your articles online and thought you might be a good person to have a conversation with about some of the recent trends that we're seeing in the, I don't even know what to call it. Maybe that's a good place to start. What do you call this trend of websites and kind of the desire for knowledge around self-realization, enlightenment, mindfulness? What do you call this entire area right now?
Oh gosh, I don't know what to call it either, to be honest. I don't like calling it self-help or anything
Right.
that sort of implies the fact that we are broken and need help. But it's certainly, I like the word enlightenment personally. It's, some words kind of resonate more than others, but I wouldn't call it self-help.
Well, it seems like 10, 15, maybe even closer to 20 years ago, this trend started around what I would call kind of logistical help, right? Which was looking at the specifics of yoga and meditation and a very kind of nuts and bolts approach to feeling better or whatever the case may be. And now in the last 5 or so years, there's been a lot more focus on what's the goal of all this stuff that we're doing, right? As opposed to how do you do a yoga pose? More about, well, what is good work-life balance? What are the trends in culture in the United States that maybe are leading to less satisfaction with one's life? Do you see the same trend, the move away from the specifics of the yoga or Pilates and more an idea of how are our day-to-day lives affecting us longer term?
I definitely do. I really like that you say that because I haven't heard many people really kind of call that out explicitly. But, I think for a long time it was about tools and techniques. It was all about like the next cool thing to do. And now it's like, okay, everyone's looking back, it's just like you said, saying, okay, well, we've been doing all this stuff, but why? What's it for? And what's it getting us? Which is a excellent place to be because we can all just go out and do a bunch of cool stuff. But what is it getting us? And I think it really kind of points toward this bigger desire to just like have a more peaceful, enjoyable experience on the planet, and however that looks for you, if it's more about success and achievement or more about slowing down or speeding up, it's different for everyone. But seeing that all of those tools and techniques of the past decade or so, are all kind of pointing us toward some bigger goal that, whatever that is for us.
In your experience as a psychologist, what trend are you seeing in terms of what seems to have people enjoying their lives less than maybe they would like to? Because, I deal with politics quite a bit on this program, and it would be very easy to think if you're aware of what's happening politically in this country or around the world, that could be a reasonable cause for dissatisfaction. But my view is very skewed because most people aren't as involved in politics as we are. Do you see it as something systemic, right? Is it media and the smartphone culture always with you and creating these kind of constant comparisons to what your friends on social media are doing? Is it some other type of work-life balance thing? I mean, what do you see as the big problem right now?
So those things you mentioned, I see as even kind of just smaller pieces of it. And I think it's even bigger than anything specific like that. and it is a misunderstanding about where our experience comes from. So I grew up believing that in order, if I wanted to have a happy life, I had to go to college and marry a person that I was always going to be happy with and get the right job and do all of those things. And I think most people believe that in some form or another. And so we're constantly looking for, what do I do? What do I get? Where do I go on vacation? Or even, how do I meditate? What self-help book do I read? What do I do to kind
Right.
of feel good? And we're just simply looking in the wrong direction.
The increase in inequality that is very obvious when you consume any amount of popular culture, news media, etc., is something that I've talked about with a financial blogger in the past. And he has kind of suggested to me that when it comes to what you're really kind of getting at, I think, is one's place in life, both educationally, relationship wise, and financially, that there's this kind of treadmill that exists where as soon as you achieve a new accomplishment, whether it is a relationship, whether it is a raise and you're making more money, no matter what it is that you achieve, we are in a way immediately then establishing a new baseline or barometer for our lives, and still then looking to the next thing. And I fall into this as well with this program, right? Which is every time we set a goal for the show and knock on wood, so far we achieve those goals, immediately I start thinking of the next thing. And it's this constant treadmill that doesn't really allow you to just say, okay, now is when I'm in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, again, a big part of that is the misunderstanding that, okay, when I hit this mark, whatever that is, then I'm going to feel a certain way.
Right.
And we tie the mark to how we feel when they're not really related. It's not like, yeah, if you run a marathon or you hit some big business milestone, sure, you're going to be happy for a little while, but that is not where sustainable long-term peace of mind and happiness come from at all. And so we're just on this treadmill of like, oh, the next thing, and then we hit the goal and we don't feel the way we thought we'd feel. So we think, well, maybe that was the wrong goal. Maybe I didn't really want this. I wanted this other thing. So then we're off running after the next thing.
Has this existed as long as humans have? I mean, I only exist now, right? So it's very hard for me to say, well, this is a dynamic. This is a phenomena that would have been observed 20, 30,000 years ago for humans. On the one hand, humans have not changed all that much in recent time, but at the same time, we have a completely unique life situation right now. The day-to-day concerns for life are so different now than they were 10,000 years ago. I wonder about that.
I do too. That's an excellent question. I don't know. I would love to go back to caveman days and see what their minds did, and what they thought about being ahead and goals and all of that. I mean, I think clearly our society today doesn't help. So, but the extent to which it creates this or maybe just magnifies it, I'm not sure. It's a great question though.
Do you get the sense that there's this trend now where online there are so many websites that are putting together articles which clearly do really well, but I question what the actual value of them. And these are, 10 things you will definitely regret in life if you don't do now. And this kind of compartmentalization, making lists of it's kind of almost like a self-help list craze. Do you think that it's good in the sense that it's opening up people to issues they may not consider at all? Or do you think the net effect is negative because it's really kind of putting things together in a way that may not really be that useful to people?
So I'll give you a psychologist answer that has nothing to do with net effect because I have no clue. But I think you need to pay attention to how it feels because I really think it can be either. I mean, I've seen those on Facebook too. And sometimes it's like, oh, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. And it really does do something good. And other times you feel horrible. So it's so, the lists crack me up. I don't think that across the board they're helpful. And I don't think that across the board they're hurtful. But I think each person really needs to pay attention to just like, how does it feel to you? And is this something you want to be thinking about right now?
All right, we've been speaking with Dr. Amy Johnson. She's a psychologist, life coach, and author. You can check out her website at dramyjohnson.com. Great to have you on today. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's great.